Welcome to SKNIS Perspectives, an interactive program of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, aired weekly on this radio station.
Coming up on Perspectives.
As a whole comprehensive approach, we decided as a means of reaching out to the general public is to organize a sphere.
The Ministry of Energy introduces a new initiative to keep consumers aware of energy-saving strategies and products on the market. Plus, work continues to create a new labor code, and the Department of Youth Empowerment raises the profile.
High-profile events and activities, people pay attention to them. We need to bring out the positive attributes of young persons. We go big.
What's he talking about? Find out next on Perspectives. Thank you for joining us. I am Ian Richards. Use less, save more, go green. That was the message behind the Energy Conservation Fair held on Friday, May 11th at Independence Square. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister responsible for Energy, the Honourable Dr. Earl Asim spoke to us about the inaugural event.
The fair is intended as a means of educating the populace of St. Kitts and Nevis ways and means and methods in which they can begin. Those who haven't started as yet, and those who would have started in terms of conservation of energy. You would appreciate that St. Kitts is not a fossil-based producer of energy, and we have to find ways and means in which we can begin to conserve our own energy in terms of fossil fuels and those that will generate in the future from our concept of renewable energy.
The idea to host the fair was based on the agenda of government to promote a green economy.
The government's policy is to ensure that we use renewable energy as a means of having some impact on the cost of electricity. We then held discussions with the SIDF and SCELEC in terms of coming up based on practices that are already undertaken in other countries in how we can basically reduce the cost of electricity. Thus, as a whole comprehensive approach, we decided as a means of reaching out to the general public is to organize this fair. And that is why the fair would have seen have various components as part of this fair.
The event drew participation from the public and private sector. TDC, Horsfords, the Sugar Industry Diversification Fund or SIDF, the Water Department, SpeedTech, SCELEC, the Embassy of the Republic of China, Taiwan, and the Department of Energy were among agencies that had a booth at Independence Square. The SIDF display included the recent initiative that allows consumers that conserve more to save on their electricity bill.
From the end of this month, citizens in St. Kitts would realize a marked reduction in the overall cost of their own electricity based on conservation. We have decided that based on the amount that you would have consumed, there's a percentage reduction on your surcharge. Those at the lower end will not only see a percentage reduction on their surcharge, but will also see a reduction on the normal cost of electricity. It is tied closely to conservation because we are strongly of the view in the ministry that any subsidy must be tied to conservation. It must be tied to helping us as a country to begin to look at our own habits and begin to change our habits in ensuring that there is an overall reduction in the consumption of electricity.
Deputy Prime Minister Martin added that he would like to see the event hosted regularly.
Well, we would hope that it be built in to our annual Energy Week. And it so happens that this is now coming in May. Our annual Energy Week is normally in September, and maybe we'll look at to see how we can bridge both activities and thus creating one activity in the future.
Workers in St. Kitts and Nevis turned out in their numbers on Labour Day in spite of the wind and rain to observe their rights earlier this month. These workers will soon enjoy revised laws and labour codes as the government, through the International Labour Organization, has engaged the services of a consultant to assist in this process. Shirima Matthew spoke to Clive Pegus during a recent visit to the Federation.
I am a consultant engaged by the ILO from time to time on labor legislation, labor standards, and developing labor policy for countries in the Caribbean region. I was engaged in 2011 to assist the government of St. Kitts and Nevis revise their current labor laws and develop a new labor code, which would be a consolidated piece of legislation encapsulating all aspects of labor law.
So what brings you to St. Kitts and Nevis at this time?
My role in the Federation at this point in time involves reviewing of existing legislation to see the extent to which they comply with international labor standards set out in conventions to which the government of St. Kitts and Nevis is a party and has ratified. In addition to that, I have engaged in consultations with all relevant stakeholders, including the employers' representatives, the trade union representatives, and the labor officials and government officials to see what issues they would like addressed in the new labor code and what are some of their concerns with respect to existing labor laws.
Can you give us a sense of what will essentially be covered in the labor code?
This labor code would be a consolidated piece of legislation encapsulating all aspects of labor law. So whereas currently you have a number of laws relating to employment relations and labor law, St. Kitts and Nevis will now have one law, a labor code, which will deal with all aspects of labor law. The labor code would have provisions dealing with the administration of labor, in particular the Labor Department, the role of the Labor Commissioner, the duties and responsibilities of the Labor Commissioner and inspectors. It will deal with settlement of disputes between workers and employers. Also, it will make provision for tripartite committees, that is a committee of the social partners, the employers' organizations, the trade unions, and the Labor Department in monitoring labor matters, in developing labor policy, and in monitoring the enforcement of labor laws generally. Of importance would be a part dealing with basic conditions of employment, and this would deal with such matters as statement of working conditions for all workers, probationary period, rest period, and standard working hours, vacation leave, sick leave, protection of wages from an unauthorized deduction, gratuities or distribution of service payments for persons in the hotel and tourism industry, maternity leave. The labor code would also deal with, would also seek to provide protection of workers from unfair dismissal, and there would be procedures in place to deal with termination of employment. It will also deal with severance payments and gratuities for long service, which would be a new provision. Equality of treatment and non-discrimination in employment, protection of children and young persons, health, safety and welfare of workers, and this would be a new provision that would apply to all workplaces in the Federation to ensure that there are proper health and safety standards in place, and treatment of migrant workers, recognition of bargaining agents, that is trade unions, for bargaining units. These would be some of the major provisions in the Consolidated Labor Code.
This Paper Tigers remix of the song called Headlock by Imogen Heap is the signature tune being used by the Department of Youth Empowerment as the theme for its new television series. Youth Profiles, a 15-minute program, will share with viewers interesting stories as told by young people themselves. Here to tell us more about Youth Profiles is Senior Youth Officer Pierre Liburd. Mr. Liburd, explain to us, what is Youth Profiles?
Youth Profiles is one of the Department of Youth Empowerment's avenues towards changing the discussion on youth and young people in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's an avenue for our young persons to share their stories, tell us who they are, where they come from, how they got to be who they are today, what shaped their perspectives, what their dreams, their goals, their ambitions are, and provides an opportunity for us as a society to understand and appreciate our young persons and the energies that they have, and to give us a chance to support them as well. We know that young people are viewed as the problem, the source of many of the ills that society would have seen in recent years. And the fact of the matter is that they're pretty much not. They are the product of society as a whole. And we have to take an account for how society shaped those young persons and take responsibility for who they are and start the dialogue, start changing the dialogue and start changing our perspective and where we interact with these young persons.
So what format does Youth Profiles take?
Youth Profiles takes a TV series format, a documentary style format where you would just be focusing on the young person, pretty much under the spotlight. There would be no interviewer, just the interviewee and the words, the questions being asked of them. Pretty simple, pretty straight up. The focus is on the young persons and what they have to show. It targets young persons from pretty much underserved communities and young persons between the ages of 20 to 35 years of age.
What type of stories can we expect to hear coming from these young persons?
The type of stories would vary, as you would expect. As individuals vary, their experiences would be different, and you would hear that coming out. But in general, we try to get a feel of where they come from, their childhood experiences that gave them something significant that shaped their thought processes and the choices that they made and continue to make, the choices that they made through adolescence and what they're doing with their energies now, and pretty much how they feel, how they see themselves in society and the relationship with society and what they're doing with their energies and their dreams, their aspirations, and what they would also like to share with the viewing audience. So pretty much in general, that is what you would be seeing coming through. Some stories would appeal to some persons, while others appeal to a different group of persons. Everything that comes out, not everybody would agree with, but that's welcome. If it sparks interest, if it sparks discussion out there in society, and positive discussion, and even persons with their not too flattering perspectives of what is shared, we welcome that as well, as long as we engage in productive discussion to have a more healthy, a more rounded and in-depth understanding of who our young people are and reassess our role in their own development and hopefully start pursuing a more dynamic and engaging, a more effective environment for developing, growing, supporting our young persons into the productive citizens that they could all be.
So give us a sense of the type of persons. You mentioned that it's varied. The type of personalities that we will see on this program.
You have a mix. Much of the young persons that we engaged are confident but shy. Many of them would have never seen themselves as being on the spotlight such as this, but that's the whole point. We tend not to pay enough attention to young persons such as these, but they're doing great things with their lives. They're volunteering in their communities. They stepped aside from gangs. Some of them might not have had such an elaborate or interesting or exciting upbringing as far as certain persons' perspective concerned, but the value of their experience is still tremendous and immense and could reflect the similar experiences of other persons who could benefit from their stories.
So then share with us, if you will, one example. Of course, we're not asking you to give away the entire series, but you've done a series of interviews with persons as well before. Give us some of the more interesting stories or the interesting takes that you would have heard.
Well, there are several things that came out in the interviews with the young persons that I find interesting. There are several entrepreneurs, very much proud and pleased to see that and to be able to share their experiences with the public and young persons, because that's something that we're trying to encourage and put in place mechanisms and support services to encourage entrepreneurship among our young persons. A lot of them had some interesting childhood. I've heard of some significant abuses, but the positive is that those young persons came out and they basically rose above it and became positive and dynamic young persons and didn't allow their negative experiences to keep them down. A lot of them didn't receive the type of support that would be necessary for young persons to ascend above the what we consider a ghetto mentality, and bits and pieces of support from the different community individuals made some significant difference to a lot of our young persons. It only takes one person in a lot of cases to turn the life of a young person from going wayward to being a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, or wherever they put their energies to. I find one theme that goes throughout, though, is missing fathers. And I hope that we pay attention to this and in the future seek to correct it, because it's a major challenge, a major obstacle for our young persons. We need more fathers involved.
So tell us, how can one experience these stories?
Anybody interested, and I'm hoping that everyone would be interested in viewing these series on ZIZ. It starts Thursday, May 16th on ZIZ at 8:30 p.m. ZIZ Television. It's a television series. And it should be running regularly on the first Thursday and the first Sunday of every month, with repeats on the second Thursday and second Sunday of every month. And that would go down through the next several months until the first season ends. After a new episode airs on ZIZ, it would be available on our Facebook page. That's the St. Kitts Department of Youth Empowerment on Facebook, and also our YouTube page, SKB Youth DEPT. And it should also be available on the ZIZ website. For anybody who missed the airing on live TV, you should also be able to view it on the Department of Youth Empowerment's website at youth.gov.kn.
We're speaking to Senior Youth Officer Pierre Liburd within the Ministry of Youth Empowerment. Mr. Liburd, we recognize that this is another initiative to recognize young persons doing positive things. And, of course, the department, most persons would be aware of the 25 Most Remarkable Teen program, which has been held for the past 2 years now, where it also recognizes teenagers, the younger persons who are doing positive things. The Remarkable Teen takes place in Parliament. Youth Profiles, as you mentioned, is a television series where it would have major impact reaching persons in St. Kitts and Nevis via television, also those in the diaspora on the internet, where anybody can look at it. Talk to us about the strategy behind using the different avenues and high-profile avenues to convey this important theme of young persons doing positive things.
Well, it's simply trying to get the message out there and moving with the times. Change your strategy according to the market that you're trying to reach. Over the years, we've been on the airways. We've put out news items, news articles. We've done trainings, symposiums, community discussions. But yet, the discussion on the airways is still young people bad. Oh, they're terrible. The comments on the news articles that are on the internet are always negative. And the negative articles come with a shooting or something to do with young persons that at most times not necessarily positive. But when you see the flood of positive stories of the accomplishments, the achievements, the goals, the dreams, the aspirations, the workings of young persons on wherever website, local or regional, the comments are usually zero, nil, unless it's something else that is totally unrelated. So we're trying a new strategy. High-profile events and activities, people pay attention to them. We need to bring out the positive attributes of young persons. We go big. People pay attention to our political figures. They pay attention to parliament proceedings. So we use the avenue, and we appreciate the support of the parliamentary representatives in bringing such attention to our young persons from underserved communities as well, to commend, appreciate, and celebrate their energies, their achievements, and to recognize them, and to bring support and acknowledgement and national acclaim to them, to help us encourage them in their positive doings and their dreams. And I think it has been doing very well. It's a popular initiative. It should continue for generations to come, and we appreciate the impact that it's having. And also, as I said, different avenues to different methods to reach your audience. This Youth Profiles is yet a different one. People pay attention to TV. We're hoping that they pay attention to this on TV, and it should be available on this social media as well. A flood of people go on to social media to discuss all manner of issues and so forth, and we're hoping that in the coming years, in the coming months, that Youth Profiles and the other initiatives that the Youth Department would have coming on stream would be a major topic. We're trying to bring greater attention, greater awareness, and a shift in the dialogue. And it's just part of our strategy to meet the young people and old people where they congregate and where they engage in discussion. And these are the most suited avenues at this point that we're working on.
Senior Youth Officer Pierre Liburd. For more information on Youth Profiles, be sure to visit the St. Kitts Department of Youth Empowerment on Facebook. And here's a quick reminder to also visit the official page of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service. Just search for the SKNIS. That's all the time for our program this week. I'm Ian Richards.
We're pleased that you joined us for this edition of SKNIS Perspectives. Join us every week at this same time on this radio station.
This program is produced by the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.